After high school, I decided I wanted to be completely committed to my Christian faith, and I decided for college to go to a fundamentalist Bible college. I majored in Bible and theology and spent 3 years doing almost nothing but study the Bible, memorizing the Bible and learning everything I could about the Bible, completely absorbed in the Bible because I was committed to the idea that the Bible was the inerrant revelation from God. There were no mistakes of any kind in the Bible. This was God's revelation to the human race. When I finished, I went to the Christian liberal arts college to finish my degree, and I took as my foreign language requirement ancient Greek so that I could read the New Testament in the original Greek language. That began the process for me of realizing that the Bible was not the inerrant revelation from God, because now I was actually reading the original text and realizing that there were problems that had to be solved. I felt like I could solve the problems, but I was seeing the problems much more clearly now. When I finished my college education, I decided I wanted to study Greek manuscripts for a living. I wanted to become a professor teaching Greek and teaching Greek manuscripts. And so I wanted to study at Princeton Theological Seminary. I went there and did a 3-year master's degree there, and then stayed for my PhD, another 4 years. During that time, I learned Hebrew, so I was reading the Old Testament in Hebrew, and I'm reading the Bible in its original languages. And fairly early on, I started finding problems that I simply couldn't resolve anymore. I found discrepancies, and once I admitted there were any discrepancies, I started finding more, and these discrepancies became irreconcilable. There were actual contradictions, and there were geographical mistakes and historical errors, and I realized my entire view that the Bible is an inerrant revelation is simply wrong, that the Bible is a very human book. The Jewish scriptures, the Hebrew Bible, consists of 22 books. These books were all written at different times, in different places, by different authors. There are centuries between the first book and the last book. Virtually all of these books are written by people who didn't know each other, didn't know about each other's writings, and they have widely disparate views on just about everything. So that if you're reading the book of Genesis, you'll get a very different perspective on things, even on who God is and what God is doing, from if you read the book of Psalms. And this collection of books, of course, is a collection that humans made. The Bible didn't drop from the sky one day. These are simply the books that had been in circulation among Jews, and these emerged as the books that eventually Jews said, these are the books that we find sacred. That started my process of deconversion. I didn't stop being Christian for many, many years. I simply moved away from being a committed evangelical Christian to being a fairly mainline liberal Christian. It was only about 15 years after I stopped being an evangelical that I stopped being a Christian. For about 15 years, I was a fairly liberal mainline Christian. Eventually, what ended up leading me away from the faith was an issue unrelated to my biblical scholarship. It had to do with how there can be so much pain and misery in the world if there's a God who's in control of it. And so, in short, it was the problem of suffering. Why is there so much suffering in the world? If God answers prayer, if God intervenes in the world to help people out, if he's concerned that his people prosper or at least survive, why is it so many people don't? Millions of people in wretched suffering. I got to a point I simply didn't believe it anymore, and I came to think, probably there's not a God who's active in this world.